Hi, this is Marie from Creations. Today I'm talking about textures. Textures can be a wonderful addition to any image. It can add mood, grain. On composites, it's a good way to bring all the different composite parts together to give it a unified feel. And personally, I'm a fan of grunge, and I often grunge up my photos. One of the easiest ways that I've found to do this is with Adobe Paper Texture Pro. Paper Texture Pro has all sorts of different textures in it. And you can add more textures from other folders as you need, some of your own, some from other companies. But you can add more. You don't have to live with what's there. You can choose what kind of blend mode you want to put on it. And the thing that's kind of neat, you can use Brainstorm, tell it how many textures you want to put on it, and create a random combination. So let's try Brainstorm first with 4 textures, randomized blend modes, and let's click Create and see what we get. Something that isn't particularly interesting. So let's look at each one of them. This is on multiply, this is on multiply, this is on multiply, this is on multiply. Now that's overlay. So let's move this one to the top because overlay lightens things up. And let's look at this one here and let's put this on maybe soft light. We're looking better already. And let's look at this one and see what we get. I'm going to try screen on this one. That's an interesting thought. But let me change this green one back to multiply now and see what happens. Okay, I like that. And it's still just a little on the dark side. So I'm going to try here a levels layer. See what that looks like. Okay. Looks pretty good. Different, unique. Now, if you want, you can choose to add individual ones. Let's say this one that's kind of, well, let's see, what's the apple blush? Let's add apple blush. And I'm going to want this, I think, on soft light, because I just want a little color to it. Where did it go? There it went. And it just brightened it up a little bit. It added a little more contrast. Looking good. Now you say to yourself, where the heck am I going to find that? Well, you want to go to exchange.adobe.com. That's exchange, exchange.adobe.com. And you'll get this page. And there's all sorts of wonderful things on here. There's brushes, there's textures, there's just probably some templates. There's just anything you want, but there's a ton of add-ons. And you'll notice they're paid or free. Take your pick. So let's look for paper texture. My internet is always a little slow when I'm recording. And look at there. We have subscriber exclusive. That means you have to belong to the Creative Cloud. Paper Texture Pro. Here's Fly Taster. This is 20 website textures from the Flypaper collection. Here are painterly textures. Now this is $40. You may want to think about this. Here's vibrant overlays for 12. There's a marble paper pack for 10 bucks. Here's a paper texture pack for $5. So there's just all sorts of ways you can find it. But I like these two. They're free. So, you know, you can look at this Paper Texture Pro. And it tells you about it. It gives you the ratings and reviews. And I would, 2.7, I'm surprised it isn't higher. I like it a lot. And it tells where you can find it. I think that if we go here, we can probably... Now, I can't download this. I already have it. It says right here that I've acquired it. But I'm pretty sure that this button, if you don't have it, this button would say download it. So that's neat things. Now today, I'm going to be using textures to change this lifeguard station into a nostalgic, old-fashioned photo postcard look. And this is from, pretty sure it's from Morgue File. And then I got this one from Lost and Taken blog. And this is a texture by Tager. So what we're going to do, I'm going to tap my V key so I can move this around. And I'm simply going to click on the texture and move it up to the tab that says Beach Guard Station. And then hopefully I'll get it in the center by holding down my Shift key, and sure enough. And you say, oh my God, that's never going to work. Well, it will. Textures really don't make a difference whether they're in focus or not. So you can take these and warp them all sorts of different ways. So I'm going to free transform this, Command or Control T. And the first thing I want to do is hold down my right mouse button and rotate it, let's say clockwise, and then I'm going to hold down my mouse button and flip it horizontal. I want this dark area down over here on the bottom side because there's a dark area already on the other side. So I'm just going to hold down my Option key. Now, if I wanted to keep its proportions, I'd also hold down the Shift key, but I don't necessarily need to constrain proportions. So I'm just going to hold down the Alt or the Option key and spread this out to where it pretty much covers what I want. Now, anything that's okay. Now you see, it's still not terribly bad. It's not badly out of focus. But now you say, okay, now what? Well, now what? I remember I tapped the V key for the Move tool a while ago. I'm going to change the blend mode of this. And I'm going to do that easily. I'm going to hold down my Shift key. And you watch here as I tap the plus key while my Shift key is down. And remember, you have to be in the Move tool to do this. And you'll watch it as it goes through. Darken blend modes. Get rid of everything that's white in the layer and add various degrees of darkness to it. Darken gets us some really weird green stuff here, so it's probably not one I would choose. I generally go with multiply, screen, overlay, or soft light. But let's look at them all. Now this time color burn adds kind of an interesting look. I'll remember that for later. Linear burn is way too dark. Darker color doesn't help. Lighten. Now here in the lighten blend modes, the black will disappear and the light areas will show in various combinations. Here's an interesting one, screen. Now you see it's made, the dark lines are pretty well gone. We can see right through them. And the yellow or the orangey stuff has been made almost white. Now I like colors that are textures that are in the brown, orange, gold, yellow areas because it makes things look old and aged. Now overlay is kind of interesting. I'm not sure I like what's going on in the sky. Soft light. Now this is a real subtle one. What soft light and overlay do, or any of them in this group, is add contrast. And that's a heck of a lot of contrast we're getting. And now we're down to the odd ones. Difference here. If you have two images that you want to line up something in it exactly, you can put the top layer into difference mode and then nudge around with your arrow keys to get it to match up exactly. Exclusion, a pretty sky, but the rest of it doesn't help much. Subtract, divide. Then we get into the colors, the hue, the lightness, saturation, and the colors that will change the color. This gives a nice sepia tone to the sky, so it's coloring the dark areas, but it isn't doing much for the light areas. And here at saturation, it's just saturating a lot. We're getting weird colors. Now color gives us much more of an even tone, not entirely. And then luminosity, the lightness and darkness of each layer overlaps. Well, I'm going to say here the one that I liked best was screen. But it's a little too strong, so I'm going to lower that opacity. And right about here, I'm getting some interesting stuff going on. A lot of texture, looks like beginning to look like an old photograph. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer because I played with this earlier. I'm going to change it to color burn. Remember, I liked that before. But in order to make a difference, I'm going to go ahead and free transform that, right click, and flip horizontal again. So now the dark areas are in different places. Again, most likely too strong. Here it is without the screen underneath. So let's lower the opacity of that one. I guess it is already. Well, here's 100%. How did it get not 100%? I don't know. Gremlins take over my computer from time to time. And then do we add, we'll look again now at the soft light or the screen and see if lowering or raising the opacity makes a difference there. I don't think there was any differences made. I might have that a little low. Let's put it up like that. So we're getting an interesting photograph-like texture. Now you can find textures of cracked photographs without any problem. There's just tons of them out there. This is just what I'm working with today. It was the first neat texture I ran across when I did a hunt for textures. Now, what I would like to do is make a vignette. I want the edges darkened. And there's two ways that I can do that. In a small document like this with only a few layers that I have not done a lot of masking and cloning, I will go ahead, select all the layers, and just say convert to a smart object. And that thinks a minute, and pretty soon you've got a smart object. Now from here, I would go into filter, camera raw filter, and I would go to FX, and I go down here to post crop vignetting and bring in those edges. Now I prefer, here's highlight priority, here's color priority, and paint overlay. I don't like the paint overlay at all. I generally end up with color priority, but it lets us change out that midpoint a little bit so we can draw more attention to the center. I can make it rounder or even square it a little bit. I can make more or less feather. I mean, we really can get this quite interesting. I am going to leave the feather about 50% and make it a little bit more rounder, because remember, all of this stuff that we're seeing is beyond the size of the canvas, as the canvas size is just what we see on the photograph. So let's say now, is it a little dark? Well, yeah, let's lighten it just a smidge. I want this to be evident. Sometimes the vignettes are just subtle, but I want this one to be quite evident. So I'm going to say OK. Now the other thing I'm going to do is go and add a border, a stroke around it. Now if you're using, let's see, an outside, you'll notice how the edges of the stroke are rounded. If I'm creating a Kodak slide, for instance, I would want this to be on the outside of it because slides have round edges. Just makes sense. However, for this particular image, I want to be an inside stroke, which you notice is square all of a sudden. And I've chosen a color that's kind of sand color, reminiscent of parchment paper, because I want this to look like an old photo. And I'm just going to add the size until it looks right to my eye. This one happens to come in 128. Wow. I think I know why, but never mind. I think this is a huge picture. I had resized it and then I took all my changes off so I could have it start fresh. So there we have an old photo. Now you say, well, what other way could you do this? Well, you could stamp a copy of your layers. And the command for that is Shift, Alt, Control E, or Shift, Option, Command E. And it won't work here because I only have one layer, so I'm going to have to just duplicate the layer, or Command or Control J. And I am going to go ahead, right click and rasterize this layer. Okay. So now I tap M for the rectangular marquee tool. I am going to put the marquee approximately where I want, so I can see approximately where the vignette is going to be. Now this is destructive, that's why I rasterized it. And if you have a bunch of layers and you go back and change them, you'll have to redo this vignette. But when I have 50 or 60 layers, a lot of them masked, a lot of them that I've done selective things to, selective color changes, and I've done healing and cloning. Sometimes putting all that number of smart objects into a single smart object, things get off kilter just a little bit, and something that was beautifully masked might be off 3 or 4 pixels or something like that. So on the really big, huge files with a lot of other smart objects in it, I will use this method because it's less hassle to me than to deal with having smart objects inside smart object, inside smart objects, and inside smart objects. But try both ways and see which works best for you. Okay, now that I've got this rectangular marquee, notice it is at 0 feathers. I do not want to feather it with this because if I do, I can't tell where the edges are going to be very well. But I am going to select Modify and choose Feather. The old versions of Photoshop, I don't know if this came out in CS or it came out in CS6 or it came out in the CC. You may only be able to put 250 pixels in. The newer versions will let us go 350. And because this is such a very, very large picture, let's see if we can get up. Maybe I can put 500 on there. By golly, it says I can. All right, so I'm going to say okay, because I know it's a big picture and I want it rounded. And sure enough, now you can see that I've got these nice rounded edges. Okay, from here, I'm going to tap the delete key to get rid of that center. That's really odd. Well, we'll see what happens. I'm going to Command or Control D to get rid of the selection, the marching ants. I'm going to change my opacity to, by clicking on opacity and typing in 30, and then I'm going to change this to multiply. And I'm not seeing much happen, so I'm going to raise the opacity. Something screwy about this, and it always is. Okay, let's go back a few steps. Command or Control, well actually, Alt, Control Z or Option, Command Z. Okay, turn this off. And let's see, I want to delete that center part. This is just really weird. I do not know why that is doing that. Well, we'll go through the steps. Get rid of the selection. This time, I'm just going to change it to multiply. Color burn. That's just really weird overlay. Apparently, oh, well, nothing seems to be changing it. Well, let's just get rid of it and try again and make this a little longer. I am going to select it all. I'm going to copy it. So Command or Control A, Command or Control C, and then I'm going to paste it, Command or Control V. Okay. Apparently the stroke is messing with me. So we go ahead and can we just reselect what we did before? Yes, we can. Nope, not that reselect. Anyways, Marquee tool. Select Modify, Feather. Okay. Tap the delete key. Change the opacity to 30%. Go ahead and change this up to multiply, or get rid of the Marching ants, change this to multiply. Okay. Phew. And we can make it darker, less or more darker. And we've lost our stroke, but we can hold down our Command or Control, no, Alt or Option key and drag that stroke up to the new layer, which really just screws us up because it's so, well, that's easy. Grab that Marquee tool again, make that a marquee around the image. Okay, then we're going to select Inverse and tap the Delete key again. Yes, this is destructive. You will have to redo it if you make changes underneath. But we can change the opacity, how dark we want it, or not. Now here it is with our little destructive vignette, and here it is with our camera raw vignette. I'm not sure which one I like best, but anyways, it is a cool way to use textures to age things and add grunge.